Hey guys, in this video we're going to be taking a look at 3 additional topics related to angles. Hopefully these will all be fairly easy for you. And then in the next video we're going to be starting on something called the unit circle. So let's go ahead and begin with our first thing, which is something called a coterminal angle. So a coterminal angle is basically just an angle that ends at the same place. So for example, if I were to draw unit circle is just a circle with a radius of 1, meaning it goes out to 1 out there. And I were to draw 2 angles, let's say first angle here is 45 degrees, would be about right there. One angle that would be coterminal to that, meaning ending at the same spot, would be 405 degrees. And the reason why is not because I put a 0 in there, but because 45 plus 360 is 405. Meaning if I were to remember that the angle is the distance from the axis here to there, that's our angle, which we'll call theta. If I were to rotate all around the circle one time and then end up back at that spot, that would be a 405 degree angle. So these angles are coterminal because they end at the same spot. Another coterminal angle to that one would be if I did 45 minus 360. If I did 45 minus 360, I would get negative 215, which means if I were to go around this way, I would end there at negative 215. Sorry, negative 315. No, math was a little fuzzy there. Sorry, guys. Negative 315. So those would all be coterminal. Another coterminal one would be 765, because if you added 360 again to 405. So there's really an infinite amount of coterminal angles. So in these problems, we're going to be asked to find a coterminal angle to whatever one they're given, and it's going to be between 0 and 360. So generally, if you were given an angle like 827, well, we're just going to look at what we'd call the coterminal angle, which would be the same angle that's between 0 and 360, because that one would actually fall on our unit circle somewhere. So all we're going to do is just take the angle that's given, 827, and subtract, in this case, multiples of 360 until we get to an angle that's between 0 and 360. So we just do 827 minus 360. We get 467. Doesn't quite work yet because it's not between 0 and 360. So we just minus 360 again, and we get 107. So that's what we're going to type in. That's a coterminal angle that is between 0 and 360. So we just keep doing it until we get the right one. And you can see here they drew the angle. This just goes around the circle. We trace around once. Goes around one time and then around again, and then ends there at 107 degrees. So basically it's just doing 2 loops around, and then it ends at the same spot that 107 degrees would. So these are pretty basic here. Let's go ahead and do one more. So this one is a negative angle, negative 1057. So all we're going to do is then add 360 plus 360 to it. So just use your calculator, negative 1057 plus 360. It's negative 697. Well, that's not good yet, so we just add 360 again. We get negative 337. It's not good, so we add it again. And we get 23 degrees. So that is the coterminal angle that is between 0 and 360. And you can see that one went around 3 times, and it went in the clockwise direction because it was negative. So that's all there is to the first section. If it's positive, you're going to subtract multiples of 360. If it's negative, you're going to add multiples of 360. So go ahead and do this one on your own real quick. All right, so if we have negative 945, we're just going to add 360 once, or add 360 twice, add 360 3 times, and we should get 135. All right, let's look at the next section. We're going to talk about something called a reference angle. So a reference angle, sort of a quick definition on that. You don't need to know the definitions, but just know what we're talking about when I refer to these terms. A reference angle is the angle formed by the terminal side. Terminal side is like the ending side of the angle, and the x-axis. So it's formed by the terminal side and the x-axis. So what I mean by that is this is the guided one where you're going to click and you're going to drag. So I'm just going to drag this to 310. Just rotate around the circle. 310 should be somewhere past 270 here. 310. Okay, so what you can see is it drew a little triangle, right? So the angle of 310 is measured from here to here. That's 310 degrees, right? But if we're talking about the reference angle, we're actually referring to a different angle in this particular one, because we want to know the angle of the terminal side. This would be the terminal side. If this was our starting side there, that would be the terminal side. So we want to find the angle between the terminal side and the x-axis. So I like to just draw a little dotted line down, and we're looking for this angle. So put a little theta there. So what is the angle that's sort of in the gap there? Because when we look at the unit circle, we're kind of going to want to use this same method of using reference angles for the unit circle. So that is called the reference angle there. The angle between the terminal side and the x-axis. All right, and how we're going to figure that out is pretty simple. Each quadrant is going to be a little bit different. I'm actually going to call this theta with a little line up there, call it theta prime. So we're talking about reference angles. I'm going to give you 4 little formulas here. So if we're in the first quadrant, our reference angle is just going to be, so we just say theta prime equals theta. Theta prime is what we're using for our reference angle. So if it's in the first quadrant, theta prime is just going to be theta, because the angle would just be like this, and it's going to be the same regardless, stuff like that. Theta would be theta prime. Okay, if we're in the second quadrant over here, then theta prime is going to be this angle from here to here, theta prime. Okay. And how we're going to calculate that is we're going to do 180 minus theta. So it's like all the way a half the circle, and then so it's like up to the half of the circle, and then we're going to minus out everything over here. So we're just going to be left with that little gap left. So 180 minus theta. If we're in the third quadrant, our formula is going to be theta prime equals theta minus 180. It's going to be the angle formed, will look something like this, or just drop it down, go towards the x-axis. So theta prime is this angle right here. So how we get that again is do whatever the theta is that it gives us minus 180. And if we're in the fourth quadrant, over here, it would be this angle. Theta prime is going to be 360 minus theta. So those are like our 4 little formulas there. So in the first quadrant, theta prime, where the reference angle is just whatever theta is. If it's in the second quadrant, we're going to do 180 minus theta. If it's in the third quadrant, we're going to do theta minus 180. And if it's in the fourth quadrant, we do 360 minus theta. Some of you can probably just figure it out by looking at the angle. You don't necessarily have to use these formulas, but if you like formulas, this is what we're going to do for all these. So in this case, our angle is in the fourth quadrant. So we're just going to be doing 360 minus theta. The theta that it gives us is 310. So all we do is 360 minus 310. And that's obviously 50 degrees. So just type it in and try it. And it's correct. All right. So hopefully you wrote down that little chart I wrote. If not, just rewind the video. Let's do a couple more. All right, rotate and find the reference angle for 55 degrees. So 55 is going to be right here. Make sure you do the rotation or you will not get it right. When we're in the first quadrant, the reference angle is the same thing as just the angle because theta prime is theta. It's still just the same angle that we're measuring before. Just measured from here to here. So it's just going to be the same 55 degrees. That's the easiest one. Okay, next one, let's see what quadrant it's in. So we know 270 is down here at the bottom. It's going to be before that, but past 180. Somewhere down here, 253. All right, so the reference angle in this one is the angle formed, if we were to just drop this straight to the axis, by these two right here. So in this one, theta prime is the angle theta, so 253 minus 180. So it's like we're subtracting out this whole half of the circle, and we're left with just that part. So that's going to be 73. All right, do one more. You guys try this on your own. So when we rotate this one, it's going to be in the second quadrant, 134 here. And there we got a reference angle. And this quadrant, theta prime is 180 minus theta. So like we're looking for this here, theta prime. So we're doing 180 minus out all of this stuff. And so we're left with just the angle there from here to here. So 180 minus, which would be 46. All right. And the last one is just going to be same thing, except it won't be guided. So we got to find the reference angle. You might want to just draw a little circle for yourself. Think about what quadrant it's in. It's not a very good one. All right, 270 is down here. 180 is here. So 254 is going to be somewhere down here, right? It's in the third quadrant. So in the third quadrant, we do the angle minus 180. So it's 254 minus 180. The reference angle is, if we draw here, would be this, would be theta prime there. So 254 minus 180, which would be 74. Okay, let's do another one. 170. Again, if you want to draw a little circle for yourself, think about what quadrant that's going to be in. 170 is right before 180, so we're right here. And 170 is the angle from here to here, but we want this little part here, that angle. So to get that, we do 180 minus the angle. Theta prime is 180 minus 170, so it's just 10 degrees. Another thing, if you haven't noticed, is that your reference angle will always be between 0. So we'll say theta prime is always between 0 and 90 degrees. Always going to be between those two. Right? It's always somewhere falls in there. If you get something like 103, you know that's not the right reference angle. It's always got to be between 0 and 90. All right, this one, 254. That is before you get to 270. So the reference angle looks like this. And in that quadrant, we do theta prime is theta minus 180. So that's going to give us 74. All right, last one. You guys do this one. So this one would be the fourth quadrant, right? 337 would be somewhere down here. In the fourth quadrant, theta prime is 360 minus theta. So 360 minus 337, and that gives us 23 degrees. All right, that does it for this video. Good luck on that, and let me know if you have questions.